Hello everyone, this is Showtime 112. By 1941, the British government was well aware that a Japanese attack on their Asian colonial possessions, such as Malaya and Burma, was highly likely. The Dutch government in exile, which controlled the East Indies, a large source of crude oil, shared similar concerns. However, both European powers had limited options to prevent a determined Japanese invasion. In terms of air power, both Britain and the Netherlands relied heavily on the Brewster Buffalo as their primary fighter aircraft. While the story of the Buffalo in Dutch service will be explored in another video, this one focuses on its role with the RAF. The Brewster Buffalo was one of those aircraft that quickly became outdated, often appearing on lists of the worst fighters of World War II. Originally designed as a carrier-based fighter, it entered service with the US Navy in December 1939. The F2A-3 variant was powered by a 1200 horsepower Wright Cyclone air-cooled engine, achieving a top speed of 321 miles per hour, or 517 kilometers per hour, and was armed with four 12.7mm machine guns. Despite being inferior to the latest British and German fighters, the Buffalo was in high demand due to the scarcity of modern combat aircraft at the time. The British first ordered Brewster Buffaloes in 1939, initially receiving a batch of 32 airframes, originally destined for Belgium. In 1940, they purchased an additional 170 under the export designation B339E, which the RAF officially called the Buffalo Mark I. This export version had a less powerful engine compared to the US Navy's version, and although pleasant to fly, it was deemed unsuitable for the European theater due to poor high-altitude performance, engine overheating, and other issues. The Buffaloes were eventually deployed to the Far East. This decision was partly based on intelligence suggesting that British pilots would primarily face outdated Japanese fighter types, such as the Ki-27. This assessment wasn't entirely incorrect, as the Ki-27 did form the bulk of the Japanese order of battle in the Malayan campaign. And even the more modern Ki-43 wasn't decisively superior to the Buffalo. On the other hand, the famous A6M-0 had flown combat missions in China since September 1940 with amazing success, and it should have been noticed by Allied intelligence. There was also a level of racial prejudice involved, but the reality was that Spitfires and Hurricanes were desperately needed in both the domestic theater and North Africa, leaving few to spare for other fronts. In the end, their deployment wouldn't have made a difference. A total of 167 Buffaloes were assigned to the Far East, arriving in Singapore in the spring of 1941 to provide air defense for Malaya, Singapore, and Burma. These aircraft were distributed among 5 RAF and Commonwealth squadrons. At the outbreak of the war, 1 Royal Air Force, 1 Royal Australian Air Force, and 1 Royal New Zealand Air Force squadron with 50 Buffaloes between them were deployed to Klang Airfield in Singapore. The 21 Royal Australian Air Force Squadron was based at Sungai Patani in northwest Malaya, while the 67th Squadron RAF was sent to Burma. Many of the airframes were stored due to a lack of manpower, and at least 20 were lost in training accidents by the fall of 1941. Most pilots were inexperienced, particularly with monoplane fighters. New Zealand pilot, Flight Sergeant Jeff Friskin, who would become the most successful Buffalo pilot outside Finland, found the airplane easy to fly and land, enjoying aerobatics in it. However, he noted that it climbed like a brick, taking 15 to 20 minutes to reach 15,000 feet. Friskin believed the Buffalo needed at least 300 more horsepower to effectively engage Japanese aircraft. His opinion of the airplane was more favorable than that of most other pilots, however. On the night of December 7–8, 1941, the Japanese invasion fleet approached the northeast coast of Malaya. The first Allied aircraft to engage the enemy were Australian Hudson bombers. Two were shot down by anti-aircraft defenses, but all 3 Japanese transport ships were reportedly hit. One of them eventually sank. (243) Squadron had a small detachment at Cotabaru airfield. 2 Buffaloes were ordered to attack landing barges on the Kelantan River and the Japanese beachhead. The first action for the Buffalo in the campaign resulted in 1 aircraft being damaged by ground fire, forcing the pilot to return to base. Pilot Officer Shields remained alone and spotted some Japanese Ki-21 bombers. While pursuing them at 9,000 feet, he saw another aircraft 2,000 feet below. Catching up, he opened fire from about 350 yards. However, his visibility was poor due to an oily windshield, and another common Buffalo issue soon manifested: machine gun jamming. All 4 machine guns jammed after 2 bursts, forcing Shields to break away and return to base. Around the same time, on the other side of the Malayan Peninsula at Sungai Petani, the 21 Royal Australian Air Force Squadron was warned of incoming aircraft from the west. 2 Buffalo sections were placed on readiness, but no aircraft were scrambled. 10 minutes later, a formation of Ki-21 Sallies from the 98th Sentai was spotted at 11,000 feet. Two pilots were already strapped into their Buffaloes as the Japanese bombers released their bombs on the airfield. Flight Lieutenant Bob Kirkman and Flying Officer John Hooper took off through bursting bombs and eventually caught up with the bombers, attempting an attack. Once again, the Buffalo machine guns failed. The raid destroyed 2 Buffaloes and damaged 5 more, along with 2 Blenheims. Other airfields were attacked as well. British airfields in Malaya lacked an effective early warning system or adequate aircraft shelters. Only some airfields had dispersal areas, and their anti-aircraft defense was modest, or in many cases, non-existent. These factors made the Japanese counter-air campaign extremely effective. The 21 RAAF squadron at Sungai Petani was setting up patrols and recon flights, leading to the Buffalo's first encounter with Japanese fighters. Flying Officer Hooper was on perimeter patrol when he spotted 7 Ki-21 bombers 2,000 feet above him. He was then attacked by fighter escorts, mistakenly identified as Zeros but likely Ki-43 Oscars. 6 enemy fighters surrounded Hooper, but he managed to escape with a split-ass maneuver. The Japanese formation was heading for another airfield, so the Oscars left him alone. Flight Lieutenant Kinnimont and Sergeant Norm Chapman were sent to look for possible landings at Singora. Upon arrival, they were intercepted by a dozen fixed undercarriage fighters identified as Navy 96s, but they were actually Army Ki-27s, probably from the 11th Sentai. Kinemon recalled the sky being full of red circles with all the Japanese trying to shoot at them. He managed to fire a burst at one of them without aiming properly and then dived to escape. While escaping, Kinemon fired a burst at an HK-6 flying boat, but missed. One Ki-27 was more persistent, following Kinemon to low level, but he avoided its fire and eventually escaped. The pilots of the 11th Sentai claimed 2 Buffaloes shot down, but both actually returned to base. Another raid on Sungai Patani occurred mid-morning, involving Ki-21s at 1200 feet. This raid was devastating, leaving No. 21 Squadron with only 4 undamaged Buffaloes. The squadron was soon ordered to withdraw to Butterworth, which had also been attacked. The 243 Squadron detachment was withdrawn as the Japanese were about to capture their airfield at Kotabaru. The first day of the attack was disastrous for British and Commonwealth forces, but things would only get worse. This concludes the first part of the Brewster Buffalo story in Malaya. On the first day of the war, all aerial encounters with Japanese aircraft were inconclusive, but this was about to change. Stay tuned for more on Showtime 112.